leading man, and many of them.
Willie Mays just brought this crowd to its feet. Swing it up and drive!
A swing, long drive, way back. It's good!
There's a new home-run champion of all time.
Sandy into his windup. Here's the pitch.
El Presidente has painted an absolute masterpiece.
He's gone.
It's coming around. Three to the plate. And he could end it all now with the most dramatic of flourishes.
What a performance! He is absolutely fabulous. You're looking at one for the ages here.
He is Mr. November!
This is one of the all-time great balls.
She is gone!
The remarkable Ryan has attained baseball immortality! The greatest of all time. Go crazy, folks! Go crazy!
They're going crazy!
I don't believe what I just saw!
A lot of great players, but Roberto Clemente. You know, people go, who would have been the toughest out? I mean, Carew was tough, Brett was tough. You know, I faced Willie Mays, but only in the All-Star game. But I don't know. I mean, I still remember Clay Dalrymple he had come over from the National League as one of our backup catchers. So we're going over the scouting Roberto Clemente. Well, you can throw him a fastball here, but don't do it twice. Get him out with a curveball, but I don't know if you want to do that more than once. And I'm going, well, how are we going to get this guy out? Well, and we didn't. He got 13 hits, was the MVP, stealing bases, throwing guys out from right field. You know, and it's funny, everybody talks about Jackie Robinson, but, you know, who obviously, you know, broke the color barrier. But if you read the book Clemente, you realize how Latin players, or people, in his case from Puerto Rico, how they had to go through a lot of the things that the African-American players did going to the minor leagues.
Because there wasn't a pitch you could probably throw Clemente. Because he was a bad ball.
Everything.
Yeah, a bad ball hitter.
Well, he had a triple left field, home run to right field off me. You know, he could hit the high fastball. He could hit the breaking ball. He was a marvelous player. And probably a lot of people didn't know that, even though he would end up with 3,000 hits because he played in Pittsburgh.
There are two kinds of people in this world. Those who love Old Bay and those who've never tried it. Because once you taste this Chesapeake Bay seasoning, you'll immediately be turned into a canvert. Old Bay goes great on seafood, chicken, corn on the cob, French fries, pretty much anything. Join the Legion of Canverts in America. Pick up a can today. And before you know it, this could be you. Old Bay, the can that connects us.
So you had a chance, it was either Orioles or the Colt 45s, Houston Colt 45s.
Yeah, Houston Colt 45s.
Colt 45s back then.
Paul Richards ran the Colt 45s, and he wanted to see me pitch. I go down and have breakfast with him, and we go back to his hotel room. He says, I'm going to give you 2 telegrams. One's going to be for $48,000. The other one's going to be $40,000. The $40,000 one will have a college scholarship. The minimum salary in the major leagues is $7,000, but I'll pay you $10,000 with $3,000 under the table. Now I'm 17 years old. I've just graduated from high school. I don't have an agent. Paul Richards comes over, leaves the 2 telegrams, grabs my mother's putters, working on his putting stroke, takes a couple peanuts out of the bowl. He says, I'll wait for your telegram tomorrow. Now the Orioles come in. Jim Wilson has been working on my parents all summer. Jim Russo was the scout that I took to the airport up in South Dakota. They sweet-talked my parents, and I become an Oriole. Best thing that ever happened.
Do you know what your goals are at this time?
You know, the expectations were that for us to get to the next level, we're playing A-ball again in Aberdeen, South Dakota, and you're making $414 after taxes, and you're living in a basement, and you go on a 9-day road trip, and they give you $27, and you didn't have a cell phone, you didn't have a credit card. That's the way you lived. 10, 12, 14-hour bus rides. So what Cal told us was, hey, we're going to do the best we can do here, but we all want to move on.
the next 2-2. Davis to left, it will hit! Oh my! It's gone! Santa Maria!
From high atop the Robinson Gearing Studio Complex and straight out of God's country, Pawleys Island, South Carolina, the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network proudly presents Backwards K Pod. And now, here's the host of the show, Jake Robinson.
I never move in slow-mo. Welcome to my dojo. This other pods so-so. Chill like fro-yo. Focus like a GoPro. Ripping up this promo. Check out the scoreboard. Freaks, I'm throwing no-no. Going. Yo, it's gone. Your heart just stopped. Cause Jake got strong and mighty. Undefeated, I mean it. Pull up the pods, cool it down and read it. Written, produced, directed, and mixed. Tongue on your lips and Ozzy Smith backflips. Pick a chip, any chip, get onto it. I got ridiculous pods without forcing it. You sit at home crying like a girl while I spread the gospel around the world. Yo, the pods are written behind tracks that mix it smooth with the groove to make ears with a lips and add a little cut and a rhythm to back it up. Another show to my name, now watch me stack them up. You think another like rap back, but this ain't no ad cat. My hobbies are rhymes, some people trying to be black for that. About time I come out, call the show BKB and let me turn it out. Yo, name Jake the Snake, born in 71. Dates, you know what time it is, I'm packing them guns. Yo, experience, I've been a witness to glory, and that's why I collect ball players and their stories. You heard? So, once again, back is the incredible, the pod animal, Jake the Snake Robinson from the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network. I'm coming out of Pawleys Island, South Carolina. Half mad, half podcast machine. Back in the Captain Kirk chair, shields down, photons up. Prepare to engage on this week's digital audio program that I call Backwards K-Pod, where we collect ball players and their stories. What's cracking, you steamhead freaks? What's juicy? Welcome back in the dojo for yet another scintillating edition, Chapter 134, in the Grassroots Podcast Show spanning the globe. BKP, back on the mount, preaching the gospel of baseball to the congregation with my choir of angels. It's your good brother, Reverend Snake Robinson, at your service. I got your hookup. Holler if you hear it. Now, before I get into this week's show, there's a little deal with the LTBPN throwback draft that I need to set up. So, back in March, we did a draft at the Facebook private group page, the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network. And what that means, basically, we did a first come, first served draft, meaning we took the first 30 volunteers and had them ostensibly draft any Major League Baseball player they desired between the years of 1960 to 2010. And that's for a 26-man roster, as well as, you get to draft a manager and choose a home park. And it's a snake draft, and it keeps going till your roster's filled out. All in all, the process took about 4 weeks, if I'm not mistaken, which was our quickest time yet. And I gotta give a shout out to Ozzy Cruz, Brian Belzito, Greg Stewart for running that thing and keeping it running smoothly. And this is like the 6th one we've done. We do a throwback draft during spring training, as I like to get the room in baseball mode after a long off season. And we do one at the end of the year that starts after the last out of the World Series. And that one is all the current MLB guys. After the draft is complete, the rosters are given to me and the commission to determine a winner. The members of the commission are the same as last year. Myself, Ben Move out of Lawrence, Kansas. Rock Jock Jayhawks. My boy Clay Bearden out of Mobile, Alabama, by way of Birmingham. Living that Gulf Coast Salt Life Roll Tide. Adam Hevel, the biggest Phillies freak I know, and the trivia master for the LTBPM page. And this year, we added my boy Mikey Franks out of Petersburg, Pennsylvania, and he was a great addition. He keeps me in check. So, it's not real easy It's real easy, and when it's your turn, you draft the guy you want, you tag the next guy, and so on and so on, till the draft is complete. And this year, the prize is a jug of moonshine of your choice from Sugarland's Distillery Shine. You got your classic White Lightning corn liquor, apple rye, apple pie, or maybe you like rums. You want to get your hands on some of that hazelnut rum, which is one of my favorites. There are literally tens of flavors, and there's nothing like having a chilled jug of shine and enjoying a baseball game. I really can't think of anything more American to do. So, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you the division winners and which team made the postseason, and then we'll get to this week's topic. And, folks, it was really hard to judge this thing. Me and the judges do not know the names of the people who drafted the teams. We only get the final rosters without the names attached. There's no favoritism at all. And I can say, every single judge on the commission took their responsibility seriously. Every team was outstanding, and any of these would dominate in any league. The difference between second place and last place was minuscule, but we did come up with a list of teams that were just a little bit above. So, without further delay, because I know some people have no idea what the hell I'm talking about, and if you don't, get your ass on the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network private Facebook group page, answer the questions, and come on in. I mean, hey, I'm giving away free moonshine. Okay, so the division winners were... First, the American League, the team that shall not be named by Greg Stewart out of Piscataway, New Jersey. The number 2 seed was Jared Kopp out of Alexandria, Northern Virginia. 3rd seed, the Amazing Aces, Jorge Huertas, Bronx, New York. And the wild card came in. Second place in the team that shall not be named was the McLovin All-Stars by Ozzie Cruz down in Puerto Rico. And in the National League, we had the Chi-Town Snapbacks with number 1 seed J.C. Johnson out of Wrigleyville. Second seed were the Hall of Fame legends of Jerry Lou from Taiwan. And third, we have Ozzie Sucks by Peter Sabello out of Utica, New York. And the NL wildcard winner was the North Carolina Nutcrackers for Dean Hobson out of Marion, North Carolina. And that's the playoff field for the 2024 LTBPN Throwback Draft. Last year's champion, Frankie Eyes, served this past year's champion with honor and class, and his team barely missed the playoffs this year. Again, all these teams were fantastic, and it was pretty tough going through all the matchups and scenarios, but we feel confident as a unit that we got it right. As we get deeper into the show, I will reveal the matchups and the results, but I got a schedule to keep. My felonious feline of a co-host, my boy Gunner, is tapping his left paw, rubbing his nose. That's the sign for me to pick up the pace and get all you remaining stragglers here at Terrapin Station, loaded up with our BKP time travel scene diesel for this week's baseball adventure. As I look to the west of Terrapin Station, I can see straight down that left field line of our majestic Jewel Box Baseball Stadium. The beautiful manicured grass, the smell of hot dogs, the beer is cold. In our hometown, BKP9 had taken the field. The pitcher has completed his warm-up tosses. The catcher has gone down to second. They've been throwing that ball around now. They look ready to give it their best shot. And the umpire has called play ball. So, everyone be wave goodbye to the fans in the stands. Hug and kiss your loved ones as I call all aboard. As this week, I will have Gunner set our time and destination for May 16th, 1965, Baltimore, Maryland, for Jim Palmer's first Major League victory. So, hurry, step right up, get in with your fitting, take off your shoes, kick up your feet, open your kimonos, Ladies, rip off those bras, stash them somewhere, let the twins dangle. We don't judge. Everyone get real comfortable as Gunner picks up the necessary quantum speeds needed to bend baseball, space, and time, creating these anomalic wormholes. And this week, we're going to perform an autopsy on the life and career of the straight-up GOAT. That's right, I said the GOAT. The greatest Oriole of all time. And folks, I usually don't interject my opinion on a lot of these topics. I try my best to let you form your own opinions. But as a kid growing up in Baltimore in the 70s, I love all those guys. Brooks, Franks, Eddie, Cal. But Palmer is at the head of the line as far as I'm concerned. No Oriole has the resume that Palmer has. Not even close. Now, you can argue this with me till you're blue in the face, but I'm liable to bite your fucking face off, man. He has been with the organization for 50 years. He's a legend, and he knows it. And while his confidence and arrogance may push some people away, and it's never pushed me away, because that is what made Palmer so great for all those years. One day, way back in 1965, a long, lean pitcher with the slow developing windup and a fastball that exploded out of his hand showed up out of the Orioles bullpen, and he never left his club or adopted city. And some of you youngins, you're going to say to me, well, what makes him the greatest? How about 3 AL Cy Youngs? Back when a dude named Koufax was the only one who won 4. He's the only Oriole to play in all 6 World Series in club history. And he was the ace on 5 of those teams. He is the only pitcher to win a World Series game in 3 different decades. But it wasn't easy. It took a lot of hard work. An adversarial manager who always pushed him as hard as he could, and a lot of adjustments along the way. In an era filled with pitching stars, many of them as his teammates as an Oriole, it took a few years for Palmer to rise to the top of his profession. But once he figured out whatever he was, he took off like a rocket, attaining new heights to become the best pitcher in the American League during the 1970s, and one of the greatest who ever lived, quite honestly. Along the way, he has been a successful model / jockey underwear pitchman, one of the best color analysts in the broadcast booth, and one of the sport's more visible and successful personalities for several decades. James Alvin Palmer was born October 15, 1945 in New York City. When Jim was 2 days old, he was adopted by Mo Wisen, a wealthy executive in the garment industry, and his wife, Pauline Kyra Wisen, who owned a dress shop. And initially, the boy was named Alvin Weissman, and he was joined by his sister Bonnie, who was 18 months older than Jim, but she was adopted around the same time. Now, Mo Wisen was Jewish, Polly was Catholic, but religion didn't play a big role in his upbringing. When Jim was a youngster, he lived in a large house on Park Avenue in New York City, but they later moved to Westchester County, where Jim attended schools in Rye and White Plains. And he and his neighbors had these large houses and properties large enough that they could play baseball in their front yards. When Jim is 9, Mo Wiseman dies, and soon Polly moved with her 2 children to California, eventually settling down in Beverly Hills, where she meets and marries Max Palmer, a character actor who had appeared in Dragnet, Highway Patrol, Playhouse 90, and many other TV shows at the time. Max would eventually adopt Jim and his older sister, and Jim become very close to Max. The boy, who was now recognized as Jim Palmer, became obsessed with baseball, and he begins dreaming of becoming a baseball player. He begins playing Little League, Pony League, and Babe Ruth League ball. And before he begins his high school career, the Palmers moved to Scottsdale, Arizona, where Jim earns all-state honors in baseball, football, and basketball with a 3.4 GPA. On the baseball team, he pitches and plays the outfield, mostly center field. He excels in hoops. He's a high-scoring forward. He's a standout wide receiver in football. And he had several college offers and considered UCLA, USC, Stanford, but he briefly enrolls at Arizona State in nearby Tempe. After high school graduation, he played some summer ball for a team in Winter, South Dakota, on a team that featured major leaguers in Jim Lomberg, Merv Brentman, Bobby Floyd, and Kurt Moten. And this club would lose in the finals, but Orioles farm director Harry Dalton, who we've spoken of many times in this BKP experience, is very impressed with Palmer's makeup. Many observers at the time felt that the 7-year-old Palmer might be the hardest throwing kid they had ever seen. On the 1,200-mile ride home, a friend of Jim's falls asleep behind the wheel, and the car flies into a ditch, flipped over several times. And there was no seatbelts in the whip, and Palmer escaped with a sore left knee that would eventually require surgery. The Orioles are completely unaware of this injury when they sign him to a $50,000 deal upon his return home. And just before heading to spring training, Jim married Susan Bryan, whom he had known throughout high school. And the couple heads out to Aberdeen, South Dakota, where the Orioles had a single-A affiliate in the Northern League. The club was managed by Cal Ripken Sr., and many future MLB players like Mark the Blade Belanger, Lou Piniella played on that team. Aberdeen runs away with the league title. Palmer goes 11-3 with a 2.51 ERA. Now, he battles control problems, walking 130 batters in 129 innings, but he also demonstrates these shades of brilliance as he hurls a no-hitter in June. And while his walk rate is very high, he otherwise excels at keeping hitters off the base. The Orioles had seen enough. They call up their precocious 19-year-old phenom as he makes the big club coming out of the 1965 spring training season. And the team had depth in the pitching department, and Palmer was mainly used as, like the spot starter and mop-up reliever. He goes 5-4 with a 3.72 ERA in 92 innings. His roommate that first year was Robert Roberts, the former Philly star, who is now in the waning years of his impressive career, but he imparted his pitching acumen onto Jim with his daily teachings. And here we are, freaks, ripping through our last anomalic wormhole at 1.6 gigahertz on our spectrum analyzer as Gunnar has us reaching our time and destination, Charm City, bitch, May 16th, 1965, where Orioles pitcher Dave McNally is having a tough go-around versus the New York Yankees. And after 2 1/3 innings pitched, the Orioles find themselves in a 4-2 deficit. Palmer comes in, he pitches 3 2/3 innings of relatively flawless baseball, giving a 1 run and 2 hits, but he does battle wildness as he walks 4 and only strikes out 1. But he faces 15 batters before giving way to Don Larson. In the bottom of the fourth, with Jim Bouton on the mound and Davy Johnson aboard, with the Orioles still trailing 4-2, Palmer helps himself out with a 2-run shot to right field in Memorial Stadium, which would tie the game up. The Orioles would tackle 3 more runs to give Palmer his first Major League win. Now, the next season, Palmer has an outstanding spring and makes the Orioles starting rotation. In the season's second game, he takes on the Red Sox. He took a 3-hit shutout into the ninth. The Sox do manage to score a run, but he settles for a 5-1 complete game victory, the first of his 211 complete games in his career. Throughout his career, Jim lived on that letter high fastball, even though manager Hank Bauer told him he would never win consistently by pitching up the zone. Well, what the fuck does he know? For the 1966 season, Palmer finished 15-10 with a 3.46 ERA and 30 starts, leading to a deep pitching staff and victories. And the Orioles won the pennant, with Jim winning the clincher with a 5-hitter in Kansas City on September 22nd. He draws the World Series Game 2 start versus the great Sandy Koufax of the Los Angeles Dodgers out at Dodger Stadium. Now, the 20-year-old Palmer is untouchable. He's laying waste in the Dodgers lineup with a 6-0 4-hitter, besting the iconic southpaw in his final career appearance. And the O's go on to sweep the Dodgers for the World Series title. And it was during this year that Palmer earned his nickname Cakes for his penchant for eating pancakes on the morning of starts. And even though it appeared the young Cakes was on his way to greatness, the fast track to stardom, his career, it stalled. And it was dead in the water the next season. Palmer felt discomfort in his arm while outdueling Koufax in the Fall Classic. He begins the 1966-7 season well enough. He throws a 1-hit masterpiece at Yankee Stadium on May 12th. But unfortunately, his shoulder stiffened during that game. And after lasting only 1 inning in his next start, he soon finds himself in Miami and Rochester pitching in 7 games before making it back to Baltimore for 2 starts in September. He finishes with a 3-1 record, 2.94 ERA for Baltimore, but he's toiling through an aching back and a sore shoulder as his injury had started as bicep tendonitis, but the favoring of the arm, it led to a torn rotator cuff in his shoulder. 1968 was another lost year for the young mercurial right-hand pitcher. He started a total of 10 games for Miami, Elmira, and Rochester, losing only 2 decisions, but only throwing 37 innings. He never made it to Baltimore that year, and he actually contemplated making his baseball comeback as a position player. Even crazier than that thought, the Orioles placed Palmer on waivers and left him completely unprotected in the upcoming fall expansion draft to stock the brand new Mariners and Royals team. He goes unselected, however, and the whispers around baseball were that Jim Palmer was done. Another young talent devoured by his own stardom, and the memory of him beating Koufax in the 1966 World Series, well, felt like ages ago. The Orioles, as an organization, they didn't believe in pampering a sore wing. George Bamberger, the O's pitching coach at the time, wanted his shooters to pitch through the pain until it was determined that surgery was the necessary remedy. So, Palmer pitched in the Florida Instructional League in the fall, and then for the Santurce Cangrejos in the Puerto Rican Winter Leagues, a team managed by Frank Robinson. And just as Bamberger had hoped, one day Palmer woke up and his arm was back with no residual pain. So he shows up at spring training with a new hope and purpose. In mid-1968, while Jim was in the minors, that was the first time he and Earl Weaver crossed paths. And the two would publicly fight each other and then take out their issues on the opposing teams for the next 14 years. And, hey, Earl could be overbearing and at times quite belligerent to his young ace in weight. And it's just a total clash of personalities, but he loved him some Jim Palmer, the pitcher. A good spring got Earl to pencil his name in the lineup for Game 5 of the season. Palmer responds with a 5-hit shutout of the Washington Senator, striking out Hondo Frank Howard 4 times. By the end of June, he's 9-2 with a 1.96 ERA. His 2 losses during that stretch was a 2-0 loss to Denny McLean and the Tigers and a 1-0 loss to Joe Horland of the White Sox. He does miss 6 weeks on the DL with a torn muscle in his lower back, but in the second start of his return, he pitches an 8-walk, no-hitter versus the Oakland A's in an 8-0 victory. He finishes the 1969 season going 16-4 with a 2.34 ERA and 6 shutouts, both of those marks being the second best in the American League. He dispatches the Minnesota Twins in Game 3 of the ALCS as the Oriole bats supply the power and he cruises to an 11-2 series-clinching win. But he loses to Gary Gentry and the amazing 1969 Mets in Game 3 of the World Series as the Mets go into their historic 5-game upset of the Orioles. A World Series I've covered for you guys already. It's sitting there in my banging-ass catalog of shows in the archives. And for the most part, Palmer's arm ailments were mostly over, and for the 8 of the next 9 years, he won 20 or more games and 3 Cy Young Awards. In fact, as the outstanding seasons began to pile up, and the honors that come with them, it becomes harder and harder to differentiate between the seasons because they're so Swiss watch consistent. During the Orioles' great run of pennants from 1969 to 1971, he was on paper often considered the third starter of the team, anchored by Dave McNally, who won 65 games during that span, and Crazy Horse Mike Cuellar, who won 67. However, in all reality, Case was generally the best pitcher on the team during that span, leading the Orioles' great stats and ERAs every year between 1969 and 1973, and again between 1975 and 1978. 9 times in 10 seasons. I'm sorry, did you say 9 times? 9 times, Mrs. Bueller. 9 times. As I told you, Palmer and Earl used to fight like cats and dogs, often on full display in the daily editions of the Baltimore Sun and the News American. And usually, it was a battle of wills and egos over where a fielder should play, whether the team should bunt in a certain situation. And Weaver wielded his power in the clubhouse with an uncompromising sword. If there was ever a man who didn't need absolute power, it was Earl fucking Weaver. You almost needed guys like Jim Palmer and catcher Rick Dempsey to be the balance to the force, to counteract Earl's belligerence. And it worked both ways. Orioles center fielder Paul Blair, before his death in 2013, he told me sometimes a young Palmer would want to pack it in and call it a game if he didn't have his best stuff on any particular day. He would come up with a twinge in his arm or in his back and complain his way out of a game. And while Hank Bauer would take him out of those games in those situations, Earl wasn't about that bullshit. I'm not taking you out, Jim. You're the best I got today. You better fucking figure it out. So Palmer learned to work through issues and find a way. Maybe go to your secondary pitches if the fastball isn't on. Maybe adjust to the rubber or fix a flaw on the fly mechanically. Whatever he had to do, because he knew that little fucking Napoleon in the Orioles dugout, he's got no mercy on him. And Earl Weaver, it made Jim Palmer grow up and be his ace. In 1970, he finishes with a 20-10 record, 2.71 ERA, leading the league with 305 innings pitched and 5 shutouts. Weaver employed a 4-man rotation, and Palmer made 39 starts, completing 17 of them. In Game 3 of the playoffs, he dominated the Twins again on a 7-hit, 12-strikeout performance, completing the O's 3-game sweep for the AL pennant. In the World Series, Weaver switches up, throws Palmer in Game 1 against the Big Red Machine of Cincinnati, and he falls behind early, but the Birds battle back and win 4-3. He comes back in Game 4 looking to sweep the Reds, and with the O's leading 5-3 going into the 8th, Palmer walks Tony Perez. He surrenders a single to Johnny Bench. So Weaver goes to the bullpen for Eddie Watt and relief of Case to face slugger Lee May. May belts a home run to give the Redlegs a 6-5 lead. That would hold up. But the Orioles would capture the chip a day later. Their second World Series title in 5 years. Palmer and the Orioles stormed back to the top of the American League in 1971 on the strength of a pitching rotation that featured 4 20-game winners and Palmer, McNally, Cuellar, and Pat Thompson. Jim leads the Orioles to a sweep of the Oakland A's in the ALCS, setting the tone with a 5-3 win, even though he surrendered 3 solo home runs. This now marked the 4th time Palmer clinched a pennant for the Orioles, doing so in the 1966 regular season, before they had league playoffs, as well as all 3 years since the playoff format began in 1969. He also defeated the Pittsburgh Pirates in Game 2 of the 1971 World Series, 11-3, and then he watched the Buccos and Roberto Clemente run roughshod over the Birds the next 3 games to take a 3-2 series lead going into Game 6. Palmer pitches well in Game 6, leaving with a 2-2 tie in the 9th that the Orioles eventually won. Unfortunately for Birdland, the Pirates wrapped up the series the very next day. And I tell you what, freaks, let's stick a pin in the Jim bio right here and take a quick break. Before we hit that break, let's hit the American League playoff results from LTBPN 2024 throwback draft that the listeners partook in during spring training of the season. And as it stands now, we have in the American League the team that shall remain nameless by Greg Stewart with the #1 seed in the playoffs and the Central Division title. Jared Cobb, Spaghetti and Meatballs #2, winner of the East. Amazing Aces from my dude Jorge Huertas, they won the West. And Ozzie Cruz won the wild card with his McLovin All-Stars in a furious race with the Lord Godlanders, the Tucson Parcel Tongues, and the Baltimore Chops. In the playoffs, the commission shortened everyone's rotation from 5-man to a 3-man. We took pitchers 4 and 5, moved them to the bully per postseason long relief, and the proverbial 2 or 3 spot starts, depending how far each of these series went. And again, this was really tough. The judges took careful thought, but honestly, we were pretty much in sync once we started evaluating the playoffs. Every once in a while, I'd throw a wrench in the conversation just to spark thought, but nobody was behind my bullshit. Everyone was laser focused, and again, every one of these teams were fantastic, but someone has to win. So in the first round of Ozzie Cruz and his McLovin All-Stars, they pull off the upset versus G-Stu and the team that shall remain nameless as the wild card beats the number 1 seed. And here's how it went down in our eyes. The McLovins, they didn't have the greatest 1 through 5 out there, and as far as rotation, not that it was bad, because again, all these teams are outstanding, but there were better 4 and 5 guys than Felix Hernandez and John Tudor. For example, Nameless had Tommy John and Kitty Cat in his 4 and 5, so we all felt that was a better bottom than yours. But here's what McLovin has in spades. He's got Justin Verlander, John Smoltz, and Andy Pettit as his 1, 2, 3, and that's about as playoff clutch as it comes. That and tremendous defense up the middle in Molina, Ripken, Biggio, Willie Mays. So we had McLovin in 7. And now that brings us to Jared and Jorge. Spaghetti and meatballs versus the amazing Aces. And this is the only matchup we were split on, but we all agreed this matchup was going 7. Both evenly matched, both were deep on the bench, but the winning consensus, like the pitching of the Aces, is just a little bit better with Max Scherzer, Clayton Kershaw, and Oral Hershiser. And this matchup was truly a coin flip, and Aces won the majority of vote. And in reality, it's the only matchup I believe we were split on. So there you go. The goddamn Puerto Ricans are taking over the national pastime. We got Ozzie versus George in the ALCS, bragging rights between the best friends. And the winner of the American League pennant in the 2024 LTBPN Throwback Draft is the McLovin All-Stars and their pitching trio of JV, Smoltz, and Pettit. It's just too good with money on the table. Another fantastic draft by my boy Huertas, who's kind of becoming like the Susan Lucci of these drafts. He's an outstanding evaluator, but he always just comes up a little short. In the end, Jorge, Ozzie had the 3-headed monster, and you had a trio of Kershaw, Armando Benitez, and to some extent Brad Lidge that, you know, it had negative consequences in the big moments with the bright lights. But, outstanding job, my friend. Next time, maybe have a different name than Amazing Aces, so we don't know it's your team, you nerd. And there you have it. Congratulations to Ozzie Cruz and Puerto Rico. You have punched your ticket to the 2024 Throwback World Series, and you're now eligible for some of that moonshine I got stashed in my vault from the Sugarlands Distillery. So, I tell you what, let's tip out Rochelle. Give my boy Gunner some treats for a great segment. Ode. I'm going to rip a few tubes, get my mind right. When we return, I'll give you the National League playoff results from the LTBPN Throwback Draft and continue on with this in-depth biography of Jim Palmer, the greatest Oriole who ever did the damn thing. If you want to fight, we'll fight. BRB, you freaks. Meet me on the dark side of the moon.
Hot times in the city, in the hot town by the sea.
The bottom of the 11th.
Bottom of the 12th inning.
So the tying run is at second, but the game right now is at the plate. And look who's coming up. We've got Ishikawa, Chris Pimble, David Ortiz, George Brett, Joe Carter is the batter.
Now listen to the ovation as he comes up to the plate.
And he gets his pitch. I want him to drive one.
Kent leads. 3-2 in the air.
A drive to right. Down the line. Oh, hit down the line. Hits one into right.
There goes the long drive. If it stays fair.
High fly ball into right field.
There's a fly ball to Fairfield.
Drive to left. It's mighty high.
There it goes.
It's mighty far.
It's gone.
See ya! See ya! See ya!
What's the blow?
Touch a ball, Joe. Go crazy, folks. Go crazy.
And we will see you tomorrow night.
He is Mr. November!
The impossible has happened. What a performance!
Howdy, y'all. This is Big Tex Gage Gein, executive producer of Backwards K Pod. In Texas, we do everything big. After football and golf, there's probably nothing I love more than going fishing and enjoying a good crawfish boil. The only thing I dislike about going fishing is the lingering odor it can leave on your hands afterwards. Well, the Fish and Hand Cleaner is an all-natural liquid soap perfect for overpowering fish and bait odors from your hands. I can't tell you how many times I've eaten steamed crabs, lobster, shrimp, crawfish, and then washed my hands with regular soap, only to touch my eyes half hour later, and my face begins to melt off due to the damn Cajun Old Bay spices. Well, we also have a hand cleaner specifically formulated to use after eating shellfish and other seafoods. Perfect for cleaning spicy, smelly hands after a Texas-sized seafood feast. In these cases, don't settle for anything less than our crawfish hand cleaner, our crab hand cleaner, or the fish and hand cleaner. An ingenious trifecta of natural hand soaps developed and owned by a disabled Navy veteran. He and Jake have a true connection as they were boot camp shipmates all the way back in 1989. So he is family, folks. And one thing we do here at the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network is look out for family. So you can support two grassroots companies by two former shipmate Navy vets. Crushing big bowls of shellfish or fishing on the banks of your favorite river while you listen to BKP. Sounds like a great day. You know, in fact, hey Mom, where are my poles? I'm gone fishing. There's also a buffalo wing hand cleaner in development as we speak. To check all of the incredible products of this great company, you can go to www.crawfishhandcleaner.com or call the home offices at 713-588-0290. That's 713-588-0290 to support the grassroots company that supports your grassroots podcast show. That's crawfishhandcleaner.com or 713-588-0290 to prepare for your summer time shellfish feast or that fishing trip you're planning. crawfishhandcleaner.com.
Baseball players are together more during the summer, a baseball team, than each individual would be with their wives. And when you're together that much, there's going to be some arguments. Jimmy and I had some dandies.
If I was going to describe Earl Weaver to somebody that had never seen him, obviously he was a short guy. He was like 5'6", which is why we never saw eye to eye.
About when to take him out, when to leave him in.
You know, he looked at himself as being a very positive guy, but there was nobody more negative ever that managed.
Who the umpire might be that night and how we're going to handle the umpire.
I mean, one day I walk a couple guys in the first inning. Blanchard makes 2 errors, which didn't happen very often in the same inning.
Boog loses the ball in the sun, and they get 2 runs. And during the middle of the first inning against the Twins in Baltimore, he walks out to the mound and asks me if I'm trying. And I go, am I trying? I said, you made out the lineup. I said, why don't you go ask, Belangelo, but try, walk out there now, or go out there, ask him if he's trying, because you put his name in the lineup and he's made 2 errors. I said, or better yet, why don't you go ask the heavyweight over at first, if he meant to lose that pop fly in the sun. I said, he may squash you.
After we had clinched the division, I told Palmer he was starting the first game, and Palmer said, I'm not starting the first game. And I said, you're starting the first game, Jeff. He said, no, Flanagan deserves to start the first game. Flanagan's going to be the Cy Young Award winner, and he won more games than me. And I said, Jim, you've had the experience. You've been through it. You know what you're doing. You know the hitter's inside out. You're starting the first game. Well, it caused a feud.
The great thing about playing for Earl Weaver is that when you knew you were going to spring training, first of all, he's going to take the best 25 players. He wasn't going to have Harry Dalton or Frank Cashin or Hank Peters tell him who were the best 25 guys. I mean, Earl was going to fight for the roster he wanted, and he had the kind of power, even though he had a lot of one-year contracts to do that, because he could be argumentative. And number 2, you knew that you had a chance to win.
So I would have liked to have been close to a lot of the ball players, and especially Jim Palmer, because Jim is one of the cleanest livers you'll ever see and one of the most intelligent people to talk to.
I never would have gotten into the Hall of Fame without him. At times it made it very difficult. But, looking back, gave me every opportunity to go out there and win a lot of games and lose a lot of games. He had a very simple philosophy. In most years, till late in my career, he didn't think there was anybody better in the bullpen. So why bring anybody in?
I guess there were a lot of them that, don't even come to mind anymore. Important at the time, probably, to one of us. Probably never important to both of us, because one of us might have been laughing at the other guy all the time.
Black and orange, black and orange, black and orange, black and orange. Yeah, you know who it is. Black and orange, black and orange, black and orange, black and orange. Yeah, you know who it is. Baltimore City, we do it big when it comes to flipping birds. That's nothing. Street view, line travel, stay stunned. Home on the wire, well on Mountain Lake. Black and orange, black and orange, black and orange, black and orange. Flipping HM, going down with your head.
Okay, nerds, welcome back to Backwards K-Pod at the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network. And before I stepped down from my spots, I was dissecting the American League side of the 2024 LTBPN Throwback Draft that the fans did at the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network group page on Facebook. And it was determined that Ozzie Cruz won the American League in a thrilling 7-game series over his good friend Jorge Huertas for bragging rights in the American League crown. Now, for the National League, all these teams were excellent, but it's up to the commission to determine one winner. The final playoff field was whittled down to 4 playoff teams. There were Chi-Town snapbacks of Joe Johnson with the number 1 seed. Jerry Liu from Taiwan had the 2nd seed with his Hall of Fame legends. Ozzie Sucks by Peter Savello came in with the 3 seed. And the North Carolina Nutcrackers team, drafted by Dean Hobson out of Marion, North Carolina, took the wild card in a hotly contested race between himself, our defending champ, New York Renegades, freaking fabulous Fungos, the Bada Bingers, and the weapons of mass production. In the first round, we had the Snapbacks take on the Nutcrackers, and we scored the Snapbacks in a 4-game sweep, as they dominated at pretty much every phase of the game. Great job, Dino. You just ran into a buzzsaw there, buddy. This was another tough matchup. And I forgot, we had a split decision on this one, as Ozzie Sucks narrowly survived the Hall of Fame legends in 7. And in the end, it comes down to Tom Seaver, Satchel Paige, and Roy Oswalt as their big 3, but very, very close. So, That leaves Ozzie Sucks versus the Chi-Town Snapbacks. And the pitching matchups were insane with Seaver versus Palmer, Ferguson Jenkins versus Satch, Cliff Lee versus Roy Oswalt. But in the end, we had a consensus agreement that the Chi-Town Snapbacks were just too well-rounded and balanced, so we gave them the National League crown. Great job, all of you. But Joe was just a little bit better and balanced. So, our Throwback World Series is set. We have the Mighty McLovin All-Stars by Ozzie Cruz winning the American League pennant, and set to battle the Chi-Town Snapbacks by Joe Johnson out of Chicago. And I'll give you the final results at the end of the Jim Palmer bio. So, when I left you, we were talking about my man Cakes, Jim Palmer. And we discussed how, as an unflappable 20-year-old Palmer shows up on the scene and beats out the left arm of God, Sandy Koufax, in the 1966 World Series, who would retire shortly after that game. And it seemed like Jim is ready to take on the baseball world, but arm injuries and setbacks dog him for the next couple of years. Both he and the team look like a flash in the pan. So much so that Palmer contemplates making a comeback as a position player. But eventually the arm does get right again, and he leads the Orioles to 3 World Series in a row from 1969 to 1971, with the Birds winning the 1970 World title to the Cincinnati Reds. But the Orioles take a big step back in 1972. Although Palmer was impressive, sporting a 2.07 ERA to go along with his 21-10 record as the club fell to third place. In 1973, he was about as consistent as one can be, going 22-10 and his league-leading 2.40 ERA, capturing his first Cy Young Award and propelling the Orioles to yet another division crown. Palmer pitched 5-hit shutout ball in Game 1 of the ALCS versus Oakland, but he's knocked out early in Game 4, a game in which the Orioles battle back and win, keep their series hopes alive, but Oakland would wrap up the American League pennant the next day. Palmer's 1974 season ends in mediocrity and arm issues. He finishes with a 7-12 record, a 3.27 ERA, and his sore arm put him on the shelf for 2 months. The Orioles roar back from 4th place, 8 games behind the Red Sox, with 63-65 record on August 28th, but they finished going 28-6 and win the East easily. Palmer throws 2 shutouts in September to help the cause. In Game 3 of the championship series, he loses to Catfish Hunter in a 1-0 game with his only run surrendered at the hands of Sal Bando and a solo home run. The Orioles would fall in 4 games. In 1975, Palmer puts together what may have been his best season, although it is very difficult discerning his prime years because of his consistency. He goes 23-11 with a league-leading 10 shutouts and a 2.09 ERA. The next season, he goes 22-13, and he leads the American League in wins and innings pitched, even though the Orioles finished in second in both seasons, which would have been great if there were wild cards back then. From 1969 to 1984, the Orioles would have made the playoffs pretty much every year, and Palmer would have been leading away, if we had the wild card format that we have today. Palmer catches both Cy Young Awards in 73 and 74, becoming the first American League hurler to win the honor 3 times. And by now, Palmer is the last star remaining from the glory years of the 70s, which only gave him more stature than ever to argue with Earl. And the two men had huge egos. Palmer reveled in telling Weaver how to manage almost as much as Weaver enjoyed telling Palmer how to pitch. To which Jim would often say, Earl, the only thing you know about Major League pitching is you could never hit it. What? As far as Jim was concerned, in Earl's eyes, Jim wanted to be Mr. Perfect. But when things didn't go as planned and they start to go sideways, you gotta deal with adversity. And Earl felt that sometimes he had to question Jim's competitive level and stick a foot in his ass. But at the end of the day, they were both trying to accomplish the same goals. And through it all, no manager and no pitcher probably ever needed each other more. In 1977, Jim becomes a visible model for jockey underwear. In the beginning of the ad campaign, there were several other players on the jockey underwear roster, like Pete Rose and Steve Carlton. But eventually, jockey just built their brand around Palmer solely. Palmer appeared in jockey ads for 20 years, and his face was also used to sell products both nationally and in the Baltimore area. Meanwhile, great seasons continued to emblazon the back of his baseball cards. He goes 20-11 with a 2.91 ERA in 1977, including league leading totals with 39 starts, 22 complete games, and 319 innings pitched. He narrowly missed out on 3 consecutive Cy Youngs, finishing a close second to Yankees relief pitcher Sparky Lyle. And Palmer attains 20 wins for the 8th time in 1978, and only Warren Spahn with 11 and Lefty Grove with 8 have matched his feat among modern-day pitchers. Jim's season of 21-12 with a 2.46 ERA was just another ho-hum, no big deal season for the consistent Palmer. He's only 32 years old, but he had racked up 215 wins to only 116 defeats at this time. The 1979 Orioles shocked many observers by winning 102 games and easily capturing their first AL crown in 5 years. Palmer started out in typical Case fashion. He's going 6-2 with a 2.80 ERA by the end of May. And for the rest of the year, he struggles with arm injuries. He lands on the DL twice, and he's limited to just 22 starts and a 10-6 record. And Palmer may not be the best pitcher of the 1979 team, but he is a respected leader that youngsters Mike Flanagan, Scott McGregor, and Dennis Martinez look up to. His stature helped him to earn the start in Game 1 of the ALCS versus the California Angels, even though Mike Flanagan was that year's Cy Young winner. He pitches 9 strong innings versus the Halos and a 6-3 win in 10 innings. In Game 2 of the World Series against the Buccos, he leaves the game after 7 innings, deadlocked at 2, and in Game 6, he loses 4-0 to John Candelaria, and the Orioles lost Game 7 the next day. A series I've spoken about many times in here, most notably on the We Are Family and Earl Weaver bios, and you can find these shows in that slamming-ass catalog I boast in the archives. Palmer is a beast in 1980. He's finishing a 16-10 season for an Orioles team that won 100 games but finished second to the Yankees and failed to make the post. He no longer had the durability of his prime, leading him to getting early hooks in a lot of these games, which led to a lot of no-decision outings. The next season was marred by a 50-day player strike in midsummer, and Palmer wasn't able to get on track, winning just 7 games. After starting poorly in 1982, GM Hank Peters told the local Baltimore press that Palmer no longer warranted a spot in the rotation. But Weaver disagreed with that assessment. After putting Jim in the bully for a few weeks, he says, "Fuck this," and he tells the local tribes that Palmer's going to turn it around once he's back in the rotation. And Jim proves him to be prophetic. In the 4 months of June through September, Palmer made 24 starts. He compiles a 13-1 record with a 2.24 ERA. Earlier that year, Weaver announced that this would be his last year at the helm. And the Orioles spent most of the year out of the contention. They did find themselves 7 games behind the Brewers in late August. And as they had done often in Weaver's tenure, the boys got white hot for the manager one last time, going 19-9 in September. Then beat the Brewers 3 straight times to tie them with one final game of the season to go. The red-hot Palmer squares off against Hall of Famer Don Sutton in the finale, October 4th, 1982. But the Brewers would prevail, routing the Orioles 10-2 off of the strength of 3 solo home runs given up by Palmer, 2 of them to Hall of Famer Robin Yount. And that's another series I've covered with in-depth detail, and you can find that in the Harvey's Wallbagger 1982 Brewers pod sitting there in the archives. That magical 1982 season, which saw the Orioles come up 1 game short, featured a 36-year-old Jim Palmer. He goes 15-5 with 3.13 ERA, which was the 3rd best earned run average in the league, marking the 10th time that he finished in the top 5 for American League ERA. And it also came with a 2nd place finish in the Cy Young ballot. In 1983, King starts out strong, allowing no earned runs in his first start, but his season was marred by just 2 long stints on the disabled list, and he ended the season 5-4 in just 11 starts. The Orioles returned to the post in 1983, but Jim doesn't play a significant role in the stretch run or the playoffs. In his 1 postseason appearance in 1983, there was Jim Palmer standing high atop the bump and 1 last World Series, Game 3 versus the Philadelphia Phillies. In a relief effort, he earns his 4th World Series victory, defeating Hall of Famer Steve Carlton, who took the L. And what a perfect bookend to a legendary career. When you consider that way back in 1966, Jim's 2nd year in the majors, he put Sandy Koufax on the shelf for good. And 17 years later, he's dusting off another Hall of Fame arm in the World Series and lefty Carlton. With that Game 3 victory in the 1983 World Series, it made Palmer the only pitcher in Major League history to win a World Series game in 3 different decades. He was sterling during the postseason, sporting an 8-3 record overall with a 2.61 ERA and 15 starts, 17 games in total. His team won 3 World Series in 6 tries, and like I said earlier in the program, had there been a wild card format during these years, the Orioles would have made the playoffs pretty much every year from 69 to 83, and Palmer was the common denominator on all those teams. He was a guy who made his teammates better just simply from his mere presence on the team. He again makes the Orioles rotation in 1984, but after 3 starts and 2 relief appearances, he's sitting at 0-3 with a 9.17 ERA. And the Orioles released him on May 17th, slamming the proverbial window on the Orioles' glory years. He made news 7 years later when he went to spring training with the Orioles, 2 years after his Hall of Fame induction, in an ill-fated comeback. The velocity was down, and he suffered a hamstring injury during an exhibition game, and then he bade farewell to the game that he loved to play. Since then, he's remained quite visible in the public eye. He's had gigs with ABC Sports for a while. He provided color commentary during World Series games, 5 in total, and All-Star games as well. In 1989, ABC lost its baseball contract, and Palmer became the announcer for his Orioles. And he's still there today, over 50 years in the Orioles system. And I know I'm a Palmer mark, but he is among the finest color commentary baseball guys in the business. Bottom fucking line, period. And he rankles some Orioles fans, which makes me laugh, because he doesn't sit in the booth waving his Oriole pom-poms around, but he's honest and frank in his critiquing of the Orioles. And because of this, he's garnered so much goodwill in the city and for the club. He has the power to pretty much say what he wants, even while his different partners in the booth through the years haven't always been afforded that luxury. His number 22 was retired officially by the Orioles. He was elected to the Hall of Fame in 1990 overwhelmingly, along with Joe Morgan on the very first shot. Through the years of ups and downs, mostly downs the last couple of years, Kinks has remained a link and a visible reminder of what greatness looks like. He has conquered pitching and broadcasting, and that dude must have made a deal with the devil because he still looks great. He is the perfect soundboard for today's rising baby birds. And you just know there's a piece of Palmer in there that wishes he could have a chance to pitch to Adley Rutschman. And folks, I think this is where we're going to wrap it up. Put a beautiful backwards K next to Jim Palmer's name on the scoreboard. But before I bounce like a bad check, let's take one last look at those so lovely Jim Palmer stats he left behind on that Hall of Fame resume. James Alvin Palmer, a.k.a. Cakes, the greatest Oriole who ever lived, and if you want to fight, bring it, jabroni. Born October 15th, 1945 in New York, New York. High school at Scottsdale, Arizona. Scottsdale High. On April 17, 1965, the 19-year-old Jim Palmer becomes the 12,341st man to join the MLB fraternity when he makes his major league debut versus the Boston Red Sox, pitching 2 innings of scoreless ball, allowing 1 hit, 2 walks, and striking out 1. 68.5 wins above replacement. Now, check it out, freaks. He faced 16,114 batters in his career, the 51st most batters faced in baseball history. Not once did that dude give up a grand slam or back-to-back dogs. Over 16,000 batters faced, 3,948 innings pitched. His philosophy was simple. I'll let you have your horseshit RBI ground in the right field, but I refuse to give in to you with the bases drunk. I'm better than you, and you're going to have to earn it. Because I ain't giving in. 268 wins, 152 losses, for a .683 winning percentage. And y'all can tell me wins don't matter, yada, yada, yada. All I know is when Palmer was pitching today, we're probably going to win. Okay? And that's what it's all about. 820 win seasons, 558 games, 211 complete games. 53 shutouts, the 16th most in baseball history. 2,212 strikeouts, 2.86 ERA, 125 ERA plus, 3.50 VIP, 1.18 WHIP. Three-time AL Cy Young Award winner, 1973, 75, and 76. 8 times in the top 5 for Cy Young balloting. 6 World Series appearances. 3 World Championships, 1966, 1970, and 1983. 2-time AL ERA champ. 4 Gold Gloves. 6-time All-Star. 5-time Pitcher of the Week. 2-time Pitcher of the Month. In 1990, he is on 92.6% available ballots for induction to the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, seamen of all ages, this is the story of Jim Palmer. And I'm so happy to have that dude in my collection of ball players in this story. God damn, I love baseball. It's got me hook, line, and sinker. I'm done. I love this fucking game. My God. So, before I make like a nose and buggy, get you back to your loved ones, patiently waiting for you back at Terrapin Station, there's still this small matter of our 2024 LTBPN throwback draft that went down during spring training this year. Me and the 5-man commission carefully examined the rosters, playing out the scenarios while every single team was fantastic. There were a few that were just a little bit better. And just so you know, full transparency, we don't know any of the names of the owners. We just look at the rosters, break it down, and then at the very end, we find out who all the players were. First of all, I want to thank our defending champion, Frankie Eyes, for wearing the crown with dignity. You were in the hunt this year to repeat, but you just came up a little short. We'll see you again in the next one. I know you want another chip. But that brings us to 2024. Representing the American League out of Puerto Rico is my boy Ozzie Cruz. Good fan of the show, great friend. With his powerful McLovin All-Star postseason rotation of Justin Verlander, John Smoltz, and Andy Pettitte. And representing the National League Superfan is Superfan Joe Johnson and his Chi-Town Snapbacks. He listens every week out there in Wrigley. And the Snapbacks are a well-balanced team. They have prodigious power in Harmon Killebrew, Chipper Jones, Larry Walker, Paul Konerko, 2 great catchers in Alston Howard and Darren Dalton, and a 3-headed rotation of Jim Palmer, Fergie Jenkins, and Cliff Lee. And look, freaks, we agonized over this. This was by far the toughest matchup of the whole thing, but in the end, me, Mike Franks, Ben Muth, Clay Bearden, Adam Hebel, we all agreed on both the winner and the fact that it was going 7 games. So, without further ado, the winner of the 2024 LTBPN Throwback Draft and the grand prize recipient of a beautiful jug of Sugarlands Distillery Moonshine of your choice. Is it going to be the McLovin All-Stars? I see the fans waving the Puerto Rican flags in anticipation. Or is it going to be J.C. Johnson? Probably doing Uber right about now, making his customers listen right now as he passes Rock and Roll McDonald's in the shop. McLovin or the Chi-Town Snapbacks? The envelope, please. Okay. And this year's winner of the 2024 Throwback Draft in 7 games. It's the Chi-Town Snapbacks. Congratulations, Joe. I was really happy to find out it was your team in the end. Both of these teams were great. Ozzy, your rotation was so dominant in the American League playoffs, but they just ran out of gas to a threesome that could match up to you. And for me personally, I feel like both teams are pretty even, but the difference was moving J.R. Richard and Al Leiter to short the pen and spot start. And that gave the Snapbacks that last little bit extra in the end. Congratulations to both of you for drafting 2 very well-conceived teams. Congratulations to Joe. I'll be talking to you in a few days. Get you that jug of liquor. You deserve it. It was a very impressive win by your team. And I guess we'll see you guys after the last out of the World Series for the current draft. We usually let the MLB 2K video game simulate that season to determine that winner. And right now, Abel Rosario is the reigning champion for that draft. So, with the Jim Palmer bio and the 2024 throwback draft in my rearview mirrors, I now turn my attention to our never say die baseball hydra, and I chop the head off that beast, only to see 2 more baseball topics appear in its place. Next week, this is going out by request to superfan Travis Hall. You asked for it. You got it, brother. By the people, for the people. Next week, we're going to dig into the guy who is synonymous with pitching excellence. Next week, we're going to learn about Denton True, Cy Young. Well, goddamn. I need to learn about that dude. I hope you guys join me. But y'all know the deal. That's another story for another pod here at Backwards K Pod, where we collect ball players and their stories. Short and sweet this week. Download and share. Leave a review. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I try to be better next week. Thank you all for coming out. God bless and win the day. And like my boy Shay Hillenbrand told me in our one-on sparring session in the dojo a couple years ago, you go to hell, Andy Pettit. Parents, if you see your kid sitting on the couch like a bored AF, by all means, take those little monkeys outside and play a game of catch. Me and my boy Charlie Guns, we throwing up our Gunnar Henderson, y'all. That's our number 2s. As in peace. See you next week, Cy Young freaks. See ya.